what should businesses look at and really focus on when they're negotiating those terms and like that term sheet? What should they be really looking out for?
That's a great question. One of the worst mistakes I have seen founders make is just um, negotiate on the valuation.
Okay.
And valuation is important metric,
Yep.
but it's not the only metric.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am truly excited about our guest today, Bharat Kanodia. He's the founder and chief appraiser for Veristrat. He's actually personally appraised over 2,000 businesses, and he's actually signed off on assets worth over $2.6 trillion. Now, today he helps startups and VCs develop a strategy around accurately pricing their business. So, Bharat, tell the audience what I missed and why they should listen today.
Thanks for having me, Dustin. Nowadays, everything is about valuation and what something is worth. You want to sell your house, you need to know what it's worth. You need to buy Bitcoin, you need to know what it's worth. You need to buy Tesla, you need to know what it's worth. So my job is to assess that, hey, if something is worth $100, is it worth it or not? Is it too cheap or too expensive? So needless to say, business has been good for the last 10 years.
Absolutely. Now, hey, bro, I mean, you actually have your own YouTube channel. It's called What It's Worth. And I'll tell you what, before the audience goes over there and checks it out, you go over a lot of the work that you've done on that channel. So definitely go check it out, everyone. I'm going to name drop a couple of things on your behalf. I mean, you've evaluated business such as like the Brooklyn Bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge, the Mall of America, Uber, Twitter. I mean, the name goes on. How do you even start that process to find out what these things are worth?
The reason I've been fortunate or given the opportunities to appraise such unique or iconic assets is because I never take my eyes off the fundamentals.
Okay.
It's very easy to get distracted by the magnificence of some of these assets or just the size of a company. But if you keep your eye on the ball, and when I say eye on the ball, as in I don't forget the fundamentals of valuations. Right. And because I always think about the fundamentals in whatever I am doing, I have been successful at looking at all kinds of unique or weird assets, if you will.
Actually, I was watching one of your videos where you actually evaluated the Eiffel Tower. And one of the things that you did there, now I really enjoyed, is you took it from if I was going to replace it, but then you took the aspect of, like I said, it's a cultural icon. That land itself is worth so much. So let's say I don't own the Eiffel Tower. Let's just say I'm a business owner and I'm thinking about selling my business. I mean, how can business owners, or what can business owners do rather to really maximize their evaluation?
There are two things you need to do, and it's very simple. And, again, I keep my eye on the ball. I keep it simple. And some people might take my two things and say, no, it's not two things, it's six things. It's seven things. It's the seven best things. It's a good book title. And, that might do well as clickbait. But right. Again, keeping things simple, I call it two things. And the first thing is you want consistency in your business. And when I say consistency, as in you want consistent revenue, consistent profit, consistent traffic, consistent customers, whatever you are, whatever your business is, you need consistent cash flow or consistent traffic or consistent engagement with customers. That's one thing that's most important. Now, second thing that's most important in a business or whatever you're doing is you need to service that customer or that client with automation. Okay. What do I mean by that? So many business owners would tell me that, hey, I can't walk away. I can't even take vacation. I am the business. If I don't do this, it never gets done. Well, then it's really not a business. You have a job. And they hate hearing that, but that's right. The way it is. So either you have different layers of management, different people under you doing things for you, which is expensive. That's one way of servicing customers and taking your hands off the wheel. And it's not a bad thing to take your hands off the wheel, right? Once in a while, right? It's like putting on cruise control. Or you can automate many processes.
Okay.
So nowadays there's a SaaS product for everything. You want to send emails, you could do SaaS. You want to do account receivables, you could do SaaS. Everything is based on SaaS, and that's all automation. And it's cheap. Back in the day, you would have to hire developers, set up all these kinds of systems, and customize development. That stuff is expensive. Nowadays, you can get this stuff for like $100 a pop, or 20 bucks, $20 a month, or something. So again, two things: consistency in revenue or engagement or traffic or whatever your metric is, and two is running your company or your business on autopilot.
Gotcha. I think that you bring up a great point there, and that is, if I'm continually working, if I am the key to my business, and when I sell it, if that key leaves with the, with the sale, and then of course that has to degrade the valuation. I guess in that case right there, what about franchises? I mean, if I own a pizza shop or whatever, but it's a franchise, does that value more than it would be if I just have a standalone pizza shop? Or even if it's 2 locations, whatever case may be.
Doesn't matter. 2 locations, 5 locations, 10 locations. That's a great question, by the way, Dustin. Franchises are generally, so if I have 2 businesses, I don't know, a chicken shop, right. One is a Chick-fil-A and one is similar size, another, Bharat's chicken.
Right.
Chick-fil-A, assuming it's the same size, same location, everything else is comparable. Everything else is the same, except this is a Chick-fil-A and this is Bharat's chicken.
Right.
Chick-fil-A is going to be 10 to 15% times more valuable than Bharat's chicken. Why? One, a potential buyer would be more inclined to write a check for a Chick-fil-A than Bharat's chicken. The same thing would be Chick-fil-A comes with its followers. Bharat's chicken, what's going to happen to it once Bharat dies? Or Bharat, had a bad night where he made a few stupid decisions and it's all over the paper. What's going to happen? Yep. Right? So it's far less risky. It's far more sticky to work with a franchise operation.
Now, I guess I know internally within different franchises, some will be corporate owned, some will be, employee operator, so to speak. Like you brought up Chick-fil-A. I've got a great friend who's actually owner operator here in New Jersey. But something like that, do you feel like it's a lot of times it's the structure of the organization, it's the structure of the franchise, it's the branding that really brings the most value, even if they're not the best chicken in town?
McDonald's doesn't have the best burger in town.
Right.
Chick-fil-A probably doesn't have. I've never actually eaten at Chick-fil-A.
Quite delicious, yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there are other chicken places better than that, right? So it's not. I mean, food is the quality of food. The taste is important, but that's not it, right? If that was it, then McDonald's wouldn't be the biggest franchise. Burger King wouldn't be the big franchise, right? So there's something else.
Okay.
And that something else is your business model or the value that you create or the culture that you build or what you offer to your customers beyond the taste of the food or the quality of the food, if you will.
Gotcha. Now, I mean, with a lot of these startups or even existing businesses, let's focus on the startups real quick. I mean, why do you feel that startups in general are valuated so high? I mean, usually they're higher than legacy companies who've been well established for years, if not decades.
For really one reason. Because investors or markets are expecting astronomical growth from startups. If you really want to get down to the crux of valuation, always follow 3 metrics. And if anybody tells you otherwise, call the 3 metrics are growth, profit, and risk. Always think in terms of growth, profit, and risk. How fast is that thing going to grow? How much profit am I going to get or how fast is my profit increasing, and how risky that investment is, right? A small boat rocks a lot more than an aircraft carrier, right? So if you always think in terms of these three metrics, you will never go wrong. Startups are valued so astronomically because people are expecting astronomical growth out of them. And that's primarily the reason. Now, why they want to favor so much on growth and not on profit or risk? Well, that's a whole technical analysis piece of things. And I'm not sure if I am the best expert to talk about technical analyses. I'm sure there are other fancy Wall Street analysts who would be better pontificating on that. I'm just a number cruncher, man. You ask me real stuff, I'll answer you those.
But I think that's great. I mean, I agree. Because I feel like most businesses, once they hit that VC stage, they've been in business for a couple of years. It's no longer just a proof of concept. And I agree. I mean, it's probably a lot of times those businesses or those investors are they're waiting for that hockey stick growth. And I think that's kind of maybe why. But when we're looking at, and when you work with businesses who are looking to sell with VCs or PEs or private equity firms, whatever the case may be, what should businesses look at and really focus on when they're negotiating those terms and like that term sheet? What should they be really looking out for?
That's a great question. One of the worst mistakes I have seen founders make is just negotiate on the valuation.
Okay.
And valuation is important metric, but it's not the only metric. There are other metrics that are more important sometimes than valuation in terms of, hey, what else is the private equity firm or the venture capital firm offering? What terms are on the books? I mean, how much participation do they want? Do they want a board seat or not? I mean, what other companies have they invested in where they have clout to maybe bring us in,
right?
To have a discussion on the table. Who are the other founders they have worked with who have exited and done well? When shit hits the fan, and it always does at some point or the other, right? If you tell it's not going to, you're lying to yourself, right? When shit hits the fan, how is this venture firm or how is this PE partner going to treat me?
Right.
Are they going to call me kicking and screaming and say, what the or are they going to call me and say that, hey, I hear this happen. What's going on? How can I help?
Okay.
Now,
when you're looking at, especially like when you're talking to startups, and again, I think you brought those 3 points, and I think probably focus on the last one there, and that's that risk component. When I look at a lot of startups, it seems like a lot of times they're just, billion-dollar evaluations. And they've been in business for 2 years. Everything's the next Netflix, everything's the next Uber. How accurate do you think those evaluations are that get the high press, and are they not looking at the risk component as maybe as fine as they should be looking?
Nowadays, not so much lately, but you hear a lot about Bitcoins, right? Yeah. Bitcoin went from $200 to $50,000, $60,000.
Yeah, to the moon. Yeah.
You'll always notice that the people who are talking about Bitcoin and how amazing it is are the people who have invested in it. Mm-hmm. Right? So they have a personal incentive to tell people about it so that other people invest in it. Does that sound like a Ponzi scheme? Now, I'm not pontificating. I'm not saying Bitcoin is good or bad, but something doesn't sound right about that. Mm-hmm. It's like, why is a Wall Street firm, it's frowned upon for them to pontificate on a stock if they are heavily invested in it? Or why are they asked to talk about their holdings in that particular equity if their analyst is talking about it, right? There's a conflict of interest there. Mm. So yeah, when the Winklevoss twins are saying, oh, Bitcoin's going to be it and it's going to be big, well, we see their holdings. So obviously it's to their interest to talk about how awesome Bitcoin is. Um, so, that's exactly what happens with many startups. And many companies, right? People who talk about these companies, well, it's to their benefit to talk about how amazing a company is. Because unless they do so, why would anybody else listen to them or buy their product or invest in them or come to work for them as an employee?
Right.
Because let's face it, right? These startups, they don't have any revenue. They're lucky if they have a product, but they still need to attract customers, employees, and investors. And how do they do that? They do that by using a artificial currency called valuations, which is done by schmucks like me in a back room somewhere. So you can just come up with any number you want, and who's going to challenge you? Because valuation at the end of the day is an opinion. Your opinion, you can have a valuation opinion. I have a valuation opinion, except my opinion is going to have more credibility than yours because this is what I do all day, every day.
Right.
But most people don't know that.
No, I mean, the course of your time doing this, I mean, almost $3 trillion worth of assets, which is quite phenomenal. So congrats on that. I mean, that's pretty impressive. And you brought up Bitcoin. Have you seen in the recent history that more evaluations, or maybe more along the lines of the purchase sell? Do you see things like Bitcoin being involved in those transactions, in those purchase sells?
I don't know, frankly. No, in the deals that I've been involved in, no, Bitcoin is not involved. But my guys are not buying Lamborghinis,
right?
Or at least I'm not involved in those. They're buying Lamborghinis. But what I am seeing is crypto, and let's leave Bitcoin out of this. I mean, right. I think this is more of a discussion of crypto and NFT. And the way I look at it is Bitcoin is, back when email got started, we all had Hotmail accounts or Yahoo Mail or something. And now, I mean, if you have a Hotmail account, you're like, wait, how old are you? You know what I mean?
Yeah, AOL.com, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So AOL.com, right? Or Time Warner or one of those, right? But email as a communication tool still exists. So cryptocurrencies and NFTs or blockchain is going to stay. It is here to stay. But the underlying company or individual assets or individual currencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, these will go in and out.
Yeah.
Like text messages are here to stay, right? Companies that provide text message services may go in and out, like Sprint.
Correct. Yep.
You hear about them? No.
Yeah, and I guess I do apologize. Maybe I've said Bitcoin a couple of times, but really what I was referring to is, I mean, that's the generic term that people use, but cryptocurrency is definitely, as you mentioned, the correct term to use. But you brought up one thing in there, NFTs. To me, again, my lack of knowledge in NFTs is quite vast. So I'll 100% admit that. But to me, I feel like NFTs, I mean, these things are selling for millions of dollars. And to me, the layman, I see them as a pixelated JPEG. You know what I'm saying? So when you're evaluating things as ambiguous as an NFT, I mean, how do you properly evaluate that? I'd love to get your insights on that, just to kind of what's the market showing for those?
This pen I found on the street. And then I discovered that this pen was something that somebody had lost one time.
Okay.
And then I discovered that somebody who had lost this pen had stolen this pen from a museum.
Well.
And then I did research that this museum happened to be the British Museum in London.
Wow.
And then I did more digging, and then I understood that this was the pen which was used to sign the Treaty of Versailles.
And you're holding it right now. That's pretty awesome. Yeah.
So what happened to the value of the pen as I was speaking?
Yeah. I mean,
It
it
was
continued to
up,
rise and grow,
going
and
up,
like, yeah.
going up. It was
Mhm.
going up. It was the same goddamn pen. You know what I mean? So it's all about the narrative. It's all about the
Mhm.
story,
Right.
right? So, yeah, Jack Dorsey's first tweet on Twitter, oh, that sold for, I don't know, $1 gajillion. Well, whoa, wow, I have it. Why? Because I can't afford it and nobody else has it. So I'm
Mhm.
cool.
Right.
I went out with the prom queen. Why? Because I was the one who went out with the prom queen.
Right. Yeah. So I guess let's kind of bring things back to probably what makes more sense to a lot of us, and that is okay. So let's kind of bring this back to the business itself, right? So NFTs, crypto, all of these things are big, huge concepts. But what if if I am a business owner, can you kind of walk us through how each business structure, and let's assume there's good leadership and they've got the boss could leave and the place still runs. Is there certain metrics that you use as a starting point? A service industry runs at a 1-to-1. A tech company works at 15-to-1. Are there any kind of starting points to give our audience an idea of kind of where you start if I'm looking to sell my business? What could I expect?
My first question I'll ask is, hey, what's the stickiness like?
Mm-hmm.
Right? For example, drinking tea is less sticky
Mm-hmm.
than smoking cigarettes.
Okay.
Right? So are you the tea to your customers, or are you the cigarettes
Mm-hmm.
to your customers? Do your customers need you, or do your customers sort of need you?
Right.
That's the question I really need to get the bottom of first, right? If you're running a grocery store, great, people need groceries, but are you the only game in town?
Mm-hmm.
If so, well, you have a different valuation than you are one of 20.
Right.
Right. So first question I always ask is, tell me about the stickiness of your customers. Do they need you? How do they pay you? Do they pay your invoices on a monthly basis, yearly basis, quarterly basis, or do they use you on a as needed basis? What's the deal here? And that's really most important, because if your customers need you, they keep coming back to you, it's almost a rental model, then you have a stable company, you have stable revenue, profit, and all those good things.
And I think there's been a lot of push towards businesses to offer, and again, and I love that term stickiness, because I really do feel like that's a differentiator. And whether I need the business or not, can I come back? And I feel like a lot of businesses are transitioning their service model, I'll call it, to more of a subscription business, right? That's how Netflix. That's how essentially a lot of times I see them as being evaluated. They hit or they missed their subscription quota or mark, for Q4, whatever the case is, and then they took a big dive. So things like that. Are you seeing a lot of business, if they can offer it, transitioning over to a subscription model with the business you work with? Is that?
And that's the first advice I give. Mm-hmm. If at all you can move to a subscription model, do it. Or at least you can make a portion of your business into a subscription model, do it. Okay. DoorDash used to just offer, like they used to have a service where they would charge, a fee or a commission for delivering food. Right. Mm-hmm. Then they offered something called Dash Pass, which is, I think, $10 or $15 a month or something like that. Right. Then Uber Pass, right? Uber, you would just pay as you go. And then they started something called Uber Pass, or Uber something they call it, right? They have a different name. That's exactly that. They're just trying to introduce that subscription model so that it's more sticky. Costco has that membership, $50 or $75 a year. That's that stickiness model that, hey, once you buy that $50 membership fee, you feel like you have to go to Costco to get your money's worth.
And then I go buy my 38 rolls of toilet paper. Yeah,
exactly. And every trip to Costco for me is like anywhere from $200 to $300, and I'm like, right. What did I buy? Like milk and bananas? Like, what the hell cost $200 here?
Right. Now, so just because this is kind of in the space that I work, the human capital metrics, the SEC mandated back in, I think, November 2020, largely went unnoticed, but now it's starting to pick up momentum where now it's not just human capital, it's not just turnover, it's not just equity, but they're starting to involve things like ESG, those environmental, social, corporate governance kind of reporting. Is that something you're seeing with the business you work in where they are now, again, now this is mainly designed for publicly traded companies, but are you seeing that trickle down to, call it the up and down business, where now they're focusing on investing in green technology and what they're doing for equity? Are you seeing anything like that for up and down the street business?
All these things are great when everything is hunky-dory. When things get serious, then all these feel-good things go out the window.
Right.
It all comes down to dollars and cents.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, all these things are happening in public companies and this and that, and people, again, like Bitcoiners, right, who are in that business, they love to talk about it. Oh, this is the best thing since sliced bread. But
Right.
The good thing they have a job.
So I guess and again, I do want to be respectful of your time. I mean, I really appreciate it,
man. I tell you straight. So you ask me a question, you'll get an answer.
No, that's awesome. I guess so the big question I have here is just I've seen reports, and I feel like this is kind of every year. But what do you think is the trends and forecast for mergers, acquisitions, looking forward to 2022 and beyond? From what I'm seeing, they're primed for a lot of movement. I'd love to get your take on kind of where you see the markets going.
The economy around the world is now based on debt.
Mm-hmm.
And debt is measured by interest rates. So long as the Fed and the global bankers, they keep interest rates low, everything will keep flowing.
Right.
And if interest rates start to rise, that's going to choke the economy. Right. Not good or bad. It still might be good for some, might be bad for some, but I'm just saying that that's the way it is. We don't live in an equity economy anymore. We live in a debt economy.
Right. Yeah, I think when you ditch the standard of gold, a long time ago, and you start printing money, I think 2020 was about a fifth of all money in circulation was printed that year, which is quite amazing. I know that the Fed is talking about maybe doing some interest rate hikes here pretty soon, but
they haven't even done it. They're still talking about it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. I mean, I agree. I mean, they're 100% still talking about it. And for me, the way I've always looked at interest rates is it really just shifts buying tendencies to short-term or long-term, or vice versa, whichever way it goes up or down. So again, it's, like you said, it's not necessarily good or bad. It's just how will it affect the economy now in the future? When you're looking at different business structures, do you see that there are some that are more beneficial, whether it's a C-Corp, S-Corp? I mean, if I'm looking into starting a business with the full intent to sell it down the road, is there one that works better or worse in those type of acquisitions?
Depending on who's buying, generally C-Corp is just easy, simple. Yeah. But it's not about the corporation, it's about the complications within the deal structure.
Okay.
As in, are there earnouts associated with it? Are they getting shares in the new company, or are they getting a board? Those type of structures or deal terms are far more involved than just the structure of the company.
Gotcha. I mean, I'm sure it's a whole semester course that we can go through to figure out stuff. Well, look, bro, this has been an absolute privilege. I think there's a lot of amazing things that you are doing. Is there anything that you wanted to share with the audience today? Again, I'm going to push people to your web YouTube page because you do some amazing things on there. Just some really thought-provoking just really episodes that you've put out there. So thank you for that. Is there anything else that you'd love to just make sure that our audience today just knows about you, about the great things that are happening in the market today? What would you love to share with them?
Valuations is always a perspective. Mm-hmm. So when somebody says to you that this thing is worth $10, try to understand the perspective they're coming from. Yeah. Don't question the $10, because once you question the $10, you're questioning them. No, don't question that. Mm-hmm. Ask them, how did you come up with the $10? Just ask them to walk you through their logic. And 99% of the time, they would say, oh, my neighbor's cousin's wife sold her company for 5x. Right. So my company is worth at least 6x. So that's how I came up with $10. Right. Oh, okay. That makes sense. So that's how I would approach those topics.
Awesome. I guess the last question I got here before we give you a chance to kind of share the best way to get in touch with you. And as you brought up one point there that I do want to keep you on just for a couple more minutes, and that is, do most businesses, do they evaluate off of gross earnings, gross receipts, or is it more of something different? Is it just pure revenue?
It depends on the business, depends on the stage of the business, depends on the industry. Sure. Technology companies, SaaS companies are nowadays on revenue, which makes no sense, because why would you do it on revenue? Because now venture capitalists are doing it on revenue, because it's far easier for them to say 10x of revenue than to say, 20,000x of profit. So that's why they do that. But traditional businesses are still traded on earnings.
That's awesome. Well, great. Well, again, thank you so much for your time today. Last question I have is, what's the best way to get in touch with you if I'm in that process of taking my company public, or if I'm looking to sell? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Best way to get in touch with me is to go to my YouTube channel. It's called What's It Worth? And there's a link to how to get in touch with me. If you have a question, shoot me an email. I'm happy to help. Awesome.
Well, Bharat, thanks so much again for your time today. I understand that, the evaluation process, it definitely ain't easy, but it's worth it. Thanks again so much for your time.
Thanks, Bob.